August 13th, 2018. The security camera on a quiet Frederick, Colorado street flickered to life just after 5 a.m. A motion alert pinged on a phone that would never be checked again. In the pale glow of a porch light, a familiar figure walked slowly toward a white work truck, calm, methodical, carrying a red gas can. Inside the house behind him, 2 little girls slept. Upstairs, their pregnant mother lay in bed, exhausted from days of travel, work, and worry. Within minutes, that quiet suburban home, trimmed lawn, pastel children's bicycles, chalk drawings on the driveway, would become the epicenter of one of the most disturbing family murders in modern American history. Because the man walking toward that truck was Chris Watts, a father known for playing princess games with his daughters, a husband who posted love notes on Facebook, a man whose smiling family photos had become the digital face of the perfect life. What the world didn't know was that inside Chris Watts, something had been rotting for years. Something cold, entitled, hollow. And on that morning, in an act that defies understanding, he destroyed the very people who believed he loved them most. Intent. It's what separates accident from murder, passion from annihilation, a moment of rage from a decision that can never be undone. It is not the act itself, but the intent behind it that makes it a crime. Today on Deadly Intent, we're examining not just the murders of Shannon Watts and her 3 children, but the psychological unraveling of a man who maintained the perfect facade while hiding the darkest secret of all, that he valued the illusion of happiness more than the lives of the people who loved him. I'm Carmen Carrion, and if you know me from Freaky Folklore or Destination Terror, you know I've spent years studying monsters, folklore creatures, cryptids, spirits, legends. But the truth is, the most horrifying monsters aren't hiding in shadows or forests. Sometimes they're sleeping in your bed. Sometimes they're making breakfast with you. Sometimes they're kissing your children goodnight. Welcome back to Deadly Intent, where we don't just talk about crime. We talk about motive, psychology, and the invisible cracks inside ordinary lives that hide extraordinary darkness. Today's case is one of the most tragic and emotionally devastating stories of the last decade. The murders of Shannon Watts, her unborn son Nico, and daughters Bella and Celeste. This is not a story about a spontaneous act of violence. This is a story about deception, entitlement, emotional detachment, and a man who cared more about appearance than truth, more about desire than responsibility, more about himself than the family who trusted him. Understanding Chris Watts isn't about excusing him. It's about exposing the kind of psychological rot that can hide under the surface of a smile. Because the real question here isn't what he did. It's why a man who had everything chose to destroy it all. Frederick, Colorado. Population just under 10,000. When the Watts family moved into their newly built home on Saratoga Trail, to neighbors, their life looked enviable. A dream house, 2 beautiful little girls, a thriving social media presence, and a marriage that seemed perfect. But perfection is often the most fragile illusion. Shannon Catherine Watts was born in North Carolina, a woman full of energy, determination, and relentless hope. After health struggles, she rebuilt her life by becoming a successful marketing professional who shared her personal experiences, triumphs, and daily routines online. She was vibrant, organized, endlessly hardworking. She loved fiercely. She believed wholeheartedly in family. And she believed Chris was her partner in all of it. Chris, on the other hand, was the quiet one, soft-spoken, agreeable, steady, a man who rarely raised his voice and smiled easily. When they met in 2010, Shannon was unsure he'd stick around. She was battling lupus, navigating a difficult divorce, unsure she deserved something good. But Chris pursued her. He showed up. He cared. And when she got sick, he stayed by her side. By 2012, they were married. By 2013, Bella was born. By 2015, Celeste, Cece, followed. Their online life looked blissful. Family trips, birthday parties, shared recipes, I love you posts, silly home videos. Shannon often wrote that she felt blessed, fortunate, grateful for a man who seemed to adore her and their girls. But behind closed doors, finances were tight. Chris rarely initiated affection. Shannon did almost everything: planning, parenting, working, managing the home, documenting their lives. Chris didn't argue. He didn't complain. He simply withdrew, quietly, subtly, invisibly. A crack no one saw forming. And into that crack, something else began to grow. Chris Watts wasn't a volcanic personality. He wasn't angry, impulsive, or aggressive. He was the opposite: placid, compliant, outwardly gentle. But people like Chris don't explode. They erode. Psychologists describe this as covert narcissism, a pattern where a person appears humble, agreeable, even shy. But underneath, they harbor resentment, entitlement, and a profound fear of conflict. Instead of expressing discomfort or stress, covert narcissists perform the role they think others want from them, while quietly resenting anyone who depends on them. Chris didn't want to be seen as a bad husband or father. He wanted the image of a good man, without the emotional labor that makes someone a true partner. And this is crucial. He valued the appearance of being a good husband, not the reality. This set the stage for everything that followed. By 2018, the illusion of perfection was paper thin. Financial stress had worsened. Chris and Shannon had filed for bankruptcy in 2015, and though they were recovering, the pressure lingered. Shannon's work required frequent travel, leaving Chris home with the girls, something he handled well on the surface, but quietly resented. And then came Nicole Kessinger. In June 2018, Chris met her through his job at Anadarko Petroleum. She was intelligent, athletic, environmentally conscious, someone who seemed to reflect the person Chris wanted to be. Someone who didn't know him as the quiet husband in a struggling marriage. Someone who didn't see the bills piling up. Someone who didn't demand emotional depth. Their affair escalated quickly. Nicole believed Chris was separating from Shannon. Chris told her what she wanted to hear, because that's who he was. But affair wasn't the cause of what he eventually did. It was a symptom of his internal collapse. While Shannon left for a 6-week work trip to North Carolina with the girls, the distance allowed Chris to indulge in fantasies of a new life. One where he wasn't weighed down by bills, responsibilities, or a wife who asked him to participate in their marriage. Back in Colorado, he joined at gyms, bought new clothes, listened to self-help audiobooks about change and freedom. He told friends he felt reevaluated, renewed. But what he really felt? Powerful, desired, reborn. For the first time, he wasn't the quiet, overlooked one. He had attention, admiration, control. And someone like Chris needs control like oxygen. While Shannon sent emotional texts, "I feel disconnected. Do you still want this marriage? Please talk to me," Chris became colder, quieter, more distant. He didn't fight. He didn't argue. He simply detached. By the time Shannon returned home in August, pregnant with their son Nico, Chris had already emotionally removed her and the girls from the life he wanted. But what makes this case so chilling is that he hid it perfectly. No yelling, no threats, no visible anger. Just a void where a husband used to be. Researchers describe a phenomenon called family annihilation fantasy, in which certain individuals, usually men, believe the only way to escape their obligations is to eliminate them. It's not rage, it's not passion, it's erasure. A complete reset button. Family annihilators tend to share specific traits: perfectionism, fear of public failure, deep emotional avoidance, need to maintain a good guy image, belief that others exist to support their wants. Chris Watts fit this profile with disturbing precision. He didn't want the scandal of divorce. He didn't want to split custody. He didn't want financial consequences. He didn't want conflict. He wanted freedom without accountability, a new life without the messiness of ending the old one. And in his distorted mind, there was only one way to achieve that. Shannon flew home from Arizona just before 2 a.m. on August 13, 2018. Her friend Nicole Atkinson dropped her off. Noticing Shannon was nervous, she had been texting all weekend, terrified Chris was pulling away. She walked into the quiet house. Her daughters slept in their rooms. Chris waited in the dark. What happened next? Chris would change repeatedly, lying, rewriting, minimizing. But forensic evidence, confession details, and what we know about the children paint a clearer picture. Shannon confronted him. She wanted honesty. She wanted answers. She wanted to fix their marriage. But Chris didn't want a marriage. He wanted escape. At some point during their conversation, Chris snapped. Not in a sudden explosion of anger, but in a terrifying, calm, premeditated break from reality. He strangled Shannon, slowly, deliberately. Strangulation takes 3 to 5 minutes. It is intimate, quiet, personal. The autopsy showed no defensive wounds on Chris. She was likely caught off guard, or exhausted, or trusting. After she died, Chris wrapped her body in a sheet. Then came the part that haunts investigators most. Bella and Celeste were awake, alive, confused. "What's wrong with Mommy?" Bella asked. Chris told them Mommy didn't feel well. He loaded all 3 into his truck. 2 little girls sitting beside their mother's covered body. He drove 45 minutes to an oil field owned by his company. The sun was rising. The girls were quiet. They had no idea they were being driven to their deaths. At the site, Chris smothered Celeste first, then Bella, who fought back. Her injuries show she bit her tongue, struggled, and tried to escape the hands of the man who was supposed to protect her. Then he forced their bodies into 2 oil tanks, small hatches only 8 inches in diameter. He buried Shannon nearby in a shallow grave and covered it with dirt. 3 lives ended, a 4th, unborn, ripped away, all by a man who claimed he loved them. Chris Watts isn't a mystery. He's a textbook example of a particular type of killer, the family annihilator, in the self-righteous entitled subtype. These individuals murder family members because they believe they deserve a fresh start. Their needs outrank their family's right to live. Their emotional discomfort justifies violence. Their image must be protected at all costs. Chris didn't kill out of rage. He killed out of convenience. He killed because the existence of his family stood in the way of the life he wanted. He killed because in his mind, they were no longer people. They were obstacles. This is the darkest aspect of his psychology. Not hatred, not madness, but indifference. At 8:30 a.m., when Shannon missed an OBGYN appointment, Her friend Nicole sensed something was wrong. She called, texted, knocked on the door. Nothing. She contacted Chris, who acted unconcerned. A mistake, investigators would later note. When police arrived, Chris appeared anxious, pacing, talking too much, offering explanations no one asked for. Body cam footage shows him sweating, fidgeting, unable to fake normal behavior. He let officers search the house. Another mistake. Shannon's phone, purse, medication, all still there. Her wedding ring on the nightstand. Cece's EpiPen untouched. No one leaves willingly without those things. That afternoon, Chris gave multiple interviews to the media, claiming he just wanted them back. But his performance was flat, rehearsed, hollow. Investigators noted several classic deception indicators: over-explaining, lack of emotion about missing children, repeating statements verbatim, speaking in past tense, self-focused language. I just want my kids back. When the FBI and CBI brought him in for questioning, they confronted him with mounting evidence, contradictions in his timeline, inconsistencies in his story, his mistress's cooperation, cell phone and vehicle GPS data. During a polygraph, the administrator told him, "Chris, you failed. Not slightly, you failed completely." And that was when the facade finally fractured. He claimed Shannon killed the girls, and he killed her in a rage. A lie. A desperate attempt to salvage his good guy image. But investigators knew the truth, and eventually, so did Chris. Faced with evidence and confronted by his father, he confessed. He told the investigators where to find the bodies: oil field, shallow grave, oil tanks. The nation gasped in collective horror. On August 15, 2018, just 2 days after Shannon and the children were murdered, Chris Watts was arrested at his home. The same doorway where he'd lied to cameras, the same driveway where his daughters had drawn chalk pictures, the same front steps where neighbors had left flowers for a family they thought were missing. As handcuffs clicked around his wrists, Chris' carefully constructed mask finally slipped completely. The investigation that followed revealed the methodical nature of his planning. He had researched divorce procedures online. He had looked up the phrase, "Man, I love you," to send to his mistress. He had Googled when to say I love you for the first time in a new relationship. While his pregnant wife sent desperate texts from North Carolina, Chris was planning a future that didn't include her. Cell phone data showed he had driven the exact route to the oil field before, scouting the location. GPS evidence proved he had been there the morning of the murders for over an hour. Security footage captured him loading something heavy into his truck. The red gas can he carried wasn't for fuel. It was a prop, part of his cover story. What separates Chris Watts from crimes of passion is the calculated nature of his actions. This wasn't a man who snapped. This was a man who planned. Forensic psychologists note that family annihilators often spend weeks or months mentally rehearsing their crimes. They compartmentalize their victims, reducing living, breathing family members to problems that need solving. Chris didn't see Shannon as his wife. He didn't see Bella and Cece as his daughters. He saw them as complications in his pursuit of happiness. The oil tanks weren't chosen randomly. They were perfect hiding spots at his workplace, somewhere he had legitimate access, where bodies might never be found. This level of planning reveals something chilling about his psychological state. He wasn't overwhelmed by emotion. He was coldly, rationally deciding that murder was his best option. In November 2018, Chris Watts pleaded guilty to 9 felony counts, 3 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of murdering a child under 12, 1 count of unlawful termination of a pregnancy, 3 counts of tampering with a deceased human body. The plea deal spared him the death penalty, but guaranteed him life in prison without possibility of parole. During his sentencing hearing, Shannon's family spoke with devastating eloquence about their loss. Her father described Bella's love of books and Cece's infectious giggles. Her mother talked about losing not just a daughter, but a best friend. Her brother spoke of an unborn nephew who would never take his first breath. Through it all, Chris sat silent. No tears, no visible remorse, no acknowledgement of the magnitude of his crimes. The judges were uncompromising. This is perhaps the most inhumane and vicious crime I have handled in my career. Even after confession, Chris Watts continued to minimize his actions and blame others. In prison interviews, he claimed Shannon was controlling. The financial pressure was overwhelming. He felt trapped. The affair just happened. What's notable isn't just what he said, it's what he never said. He never expressed genuine remorse for his children's suffering. He never acknowledged their fear, their confusion, their pain. He never spoke about them as individual people he'd loved. This absence of empathy isn't unusual in family annihilators. Research shows they often view their victims as extensions of themselves, rather than separate human beings with their own rights to life. Chris destroyed his family because he couldn't see them as anything more than obstacles to his desires. Today, Chris Watts serves his sentence at Dodge Correctional Institution in Wisconsin. He spends 23 hours a day in his cell. He has no contact with the outside world, beyond approved mail and rare phone calls. He will never be eligible for parole. He will never walk free. But the ripple effects of his crimes continue. Shannon's parents fight to keep their daughter's memory alive, while grieving grandchildren they'll never see grow up. The Watts family home was demolished, too haunting to remain standing. The case spawned documentaries, books, and endless speculation, turning a family's tragedy into public entertainment. And somewhere in the noise of media coverage and true crime fascination, 3 innocent lives became statistics instead of remembered as the individuals they were. Shannon, a woman who believed in love, worked tirelessly for her family, and died trying to save her marriage. Bella, a 4-year-old who loved princesses and asked her father what's wrong with mommy in her final moments. Cece, a 3-year-old with bright eyes and a belly laugh who trusted the man who murdered her. And Nico, a son who never drew breath, never opened his eyes, never had a chance. Evil doesn't always announce itself. Monsters don't always look monstrous. Killers don't always seem dangerous. Sometimes they look like the quiet husband next door. Sometimes they coach Little League. Sometimes they post loving messages on social media. Sometimes they fool everyone, including themselves. The warning signs were subtle. Emotional withdrawal, conflict avoidance, self-centered thinking, compartmentalization of relationships. But here's what matters most. Understanding these patterns doesn't excuse them. Recognizing psychological red flags doesn't diminish accountability. Explaining behavior isn't the same as justifying it. Chris Watts made a choice, not in a moment of passion, but through weeks of cold calculation. He chose his comfort over their lives. He chose his desires over their right to exist. He chose himself over everything else. And that choice, that intent, is what makes his actions unforgivable. Before we close today's episode, I want to take a moment to step away from the psychology of the perpetrator and focus on the people whose lives were stolen. Because in cases like this, it's easy for victims to become overshadowed by the analysis of their killer. Shannon, Bella, Cece, and Nico were not just statistics in a true crime story. They were real people with hopes, dreams, personalities, and futures that were violently taken away. Shannon Catherine Watts, born January 10, 1984. Shannon was a fighter from the very beginning. After being diagnosed with lupus in her 20s, she could have given up. But instead, she rebuilt her entire life with determination and grace. She was the kind of person who sent good morning texts to friends, who remembered birthdays and anniversaries, who celebrated other people's successes as enthusiastically as her own. Her colleagues remember her infectious energy during business calls, how she could motivate an entire team with her enthusiasm. Her friends remember her loyalty, how she'd drop everything to help someone in need. Her family remembers her as the glue that held everyone together during holidays and gatherings. Shannon loved fiercely and completely. She believed in second chances, in fighting for your marriage, in the power of positive thinking. She documented her life not out of vanity, but out of genuine joy. She wanted to remember every precious moment with her children. She was 34 years old. She should have been planning her son's nursery, watching her daughters start school, growing old with the man she loved. Instead, she spent her final moments fighting for her family's life. Bella Marie Watts, born December 17, 2013. Bella was 4 years old, full of curiosity, intelligence, and endless questions about the world around her. She loved books and could sit for hours flipping through picture stories. She was gentle with her little sister, often helping Cece with tasks she found difficult. She had an active imagination and could turn a cardboard box into a spaceship or a castle. Bella loved dress-up games with her father, playing princess, having tea parties, creating elaborate storylines with her toys. She was starting to read simple words and was so proud when she could sound out new letters. She loved animals and always wanted to pet every dog she met. She asked thoughtful questions that surprised adults, the kind of child who noticed everything and remembered everything. Her teacher said she was kind to classmates, sharing toys and including others in her games. Bella should have started kindergarten that fall. She should have lost her first tooth, learned to ride a bike without training wheels, made best friends, and had sleepovers. She deserved to grow up. Celeste Catherine Watts, Cece, born July 17, 2015. Cece was 3 years old, a little girl with an enormous personality packed into a tiny frame. She had her mother's determination and her own unique spark. She was fearless in a way that both delighted and terrified her parents, climbing higher, running faster, attempting things that seemed impossible for someone so small. Cece had allergies that required careful attention, but she never let them slow her down. She loved music and would dance to any song that came on, spinning, jumping, moving with pure joy. She adored her big sister and wanted to do everything Bella did, even when she was too little to keep up. She had the most infectious giggle, the kind of laugh that made everyone around her smile. She was affectionate, giving hugs and kisses freely to anyone she loved. She was just beginning to string together longer sentences, excited to communicate her big thoughts and feelings. Cece should have started preschool, learned to write her name, developed her own interests and friendships. She should have grown into the spirited, joyful person she was already becoming. Nico Lee Watts, due January 31st, 2019. Nico never had the chance to take his first breath, but he was already deeply loved. Shannon talked to him constantly during her pregnancy, telling him about his big sisters, about the room they were preparing, about all the adventures they would have together. She had already picked out clothes for him, little outfits she imagined him wearing. She had chosen his name carefully, wanting something that honored both their families. She had started reading to him during quiet moments, believing he could hear her voice. Bella and Cece were excited about their baby brother. They had picked out toys they wanted to share with him and practiced being gentle by caring for their dolls. Nico should have been born into a family that was eagerly waiting for him. He should have experienced his first Christmas, learned to crawl, taken his first steps. He should have had the chance to be someone, to become whatever he was meant to be. Their legacy. These 4 people, Shanna, Bella, Cece, and Nico, were not perfect, because no one is. But they were loved, they were wanted, and they deserved to live. They deserved ordinary moments, grocery store trips, and bedtime stories. Birthday parties and scraped knees, arguments over vegetables, and celebrations over small victories. They deserved their future. In their memory, let's remember that behind every true crime case are real people, with real lives that mattered. They weren't just victims. They were a mother, 2 little girls, and an unborn son who were loved beyond measure. Their lives had meaning beyond the way they ended, and that meaning should never be forgotten. If you'd like to honor their memory, the Shannon Watts Foundation has been established to help women and children in crisis situations. Information can be found through legitimate victim advocacy organizations. Thank you for listening, and thank you for remembering them, not just as victims, but as the people they were. I'm Carmen Carrion, and this has been Deadly Intent. If this case has affected you, please reach out to someone you trust. Domestic violence resources are available through the National Domestic Violence Hotline. The monsters in folklore are fiction. The monsters in our communities are real. And sometimes the most dangerous ones are hiding in plain sight. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay safe, and remember, intent reveals everything.